Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This morning we'll be in 3 John. So if you have your Bibles, if you'll go ahead and open up to 3 John this morning. 3 John is an interesting letter. In fact, it's a little bit different than both 1 John and 2 John. It includes some similar themes, which we're going to talk about. It includes a similar goal, which we will also discuss. But in many ways, it is its own unique letter. And so just a little bit of background on 3 John as we begin. The author is the elder, which is the same author that we saw in our study of 2 John. The elder is the author, and the audience this time is a disciple named Gaius. And Gaius is someone that we'll be looking at further as someone who is worthwhile of emulating, someone who is worthwhile of seeking to be like. And as we read this letter, he'll be contrasted with another person that is not so worthy of emulation. So it's a compare and contrast type approach, which we know John likes to use, but this time he's using two different people as a part of this compare and contrast. And so similar to what we have looked at before in terms of dating, it really all depends on when you date the Gospel of John. These are thought to be sent after the Gospel of John, and you'll see the Gospel of John dated anywhere from about 70 AD to 90 AD, and so that gives kind of 20 years on top of that as a possibility of when these letters were first in circulation. And so this is really a personal letter that we believe also received some additional distribution, but its original intent was as a personal letter. And so we talked about last week, we introduced the idea of the cover letter theory with 2 John, and we talked about how, I think there may be some flaws in that idea, but if you were to, fully look at that idea, they would also contend that 3 John was included in this letter packet as well. And so 2 John was intended as a cover letter to 1 John, and then 3 John was intended as a personal letter that was just delivered at that same time. So the thought would be that one courier delivered all 3 letters at one particular time. So that's one thought. And the other thought is the idea of sequential letters, that these were letters to the same community sent at different dates. And that's the operating theory that we're going to use for our exploration of 3 John. So because 3 John is highly personal, it mentions several names that are only names to us, and it presupposes a setting that's now lost to us. In fact, some have viewed it as the most non-theological letter in the New Testament. And while it may not be necessarily theological in the sense that it, unpacks, core truths about the nature of God or about the nature of Christ or the Holy Spirit, it's very theological in the sense that it is incredibly practical. It's very much about the application of theological principles. It's about where our ideas about God meet our daily living. It's really what discipleship entails, how we take our theology and we apply it to our everyday lives. And 3 John is a great example of someone who's doing that and someone who's allowing their views to inform their living in a good way, and also someone who's allowing their particular views to not inform their living in a good way. So let's go ahead and read 3 John together in its entirety, and then we'll seek to unpack it a little bit further. Before we do, I also want to clear up, I believe I misspoke last week. I was intending to speak to just how short 2 John was, and I accidentally said it's the shortest letter by Greek characters, but that's not correct. It's the second shortest letter by Greek characters. 3 John is actually the shortest. So if you were worried about that all week, you can rest assured that you were correct and I was incorrect. 3 John is the shortest. 2 John is the second shortest. So let's go ahead and read 3 John here. The elder to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers and sisters, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. Please send them on their way in a manner that honors God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. We ought therefore to show hospitality to such people so that we may work together for the truth. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, did not welcome us. So when I come, I will call attention to what he is doing, spreading malicious nonsense about us. Not satisfied with that, he even refuses to welcome other believers. He also stops those who want to do so, and he puts them out of the church. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone, and even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. I have much to write to you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends here send their greetings. Greet the friends there by name. And that's the letter to 3 John. Very personal. It mentions 3 people by name directly, Gaius, Diotrephes, and Demetrius. We're going to look at all three of them, and what John has to say to them. So who is the elder? We already talked about that a little bit. It's well believed that this is John the apostle, and there are some reasons that we can pretty well believe that, but one of the reasons is it just so fits with 1st and 2nd John. Clearly they stem from the same author, who in each case refers to himself as the elder. He uses similar terms: truth, love, welcome. He employs almost identical closing sentences, and there is no reason to doubt that this author could be John the apostle, likewise the author of 1 John. That's from Gary Burge. So we see a pretty good correlation between 3 John and 2 John. We've already made the case that 2 John was written by the same person who wrote 1 John. And so therefore, we can pretty well conclude that 3 John was also written by the same person who wrote 1 John as well. And so let's dive into this a little bit further. So we see this introduction. This is a fairly classical introduction, right? It's his friend that he's writing to, and he tells him that he loves him in the truth, right? This is something that in 1 John we talked about a lot, how love and truth are these twin themes that permeate all of John's writings, and he loves him in the truth. And we know that the truth that he's talking about often is, the belief that Jesus Christ is who he says he is. And this idea that to love someone in the truth is to love someone in Jesus. And so I think that is a fair reading here as well. He's saying, hey, you're one of the community of faith. You're a disciple. You're a true follower of Jesus. He offers him, this blessing here. He hopes that he has good health. He's praying that things are going well with him, even as your soul is getting along well, right? This, he has well wishes for this friend of his. And he's also incredibly joyful about the fact that this person is continuing to be faithful to the truth, right? We've talked about this a lot. They've got this internal struggle in these churches in this area. There's this false doctrine that's taken hold. Many have fallen away. there is a kind of a crisis, and he is overjoyed that this particular person is continuing to walk in the truth. And one of the things that we've seen throughout both previous letters is this theme that John takes joy when he sees others continue in the faith. And I think that's an encouragement that we should have as well. We should be overjoyed when we see our brothers and sisters continuing to seek Christ, to seek to be the people that he calls us to be. And so who is this Gaius? Well, we know the elder writes to commend and exhort his dear friend. Gaius apparently belonged to a different congregation from the elder, but the elder planned to visit him and his other friends there, right? They may not be in the same local church, but they're members of the same church globally, right? The followers of Jesus, and it's John's desire to bring encouragement to Gaius. So do we know who this Gaius was? Well, we do know it's a common Roman name, and the name itself means rejoicing. It occurs 5 times in the New Testament, and we believe of those 5 times, it's probably at least referring to 3 different men. We have Gaius of Corinth, Gaius of Macedonia, and Gaius of Derbe, right? Those are 3 references to different individuals who have this name that we see in Scripture. According to church history, dating back to the 4th century, Gaius of Derbe is the addressee of 3 John. The tradition is possibly correct, but due to a lack of earlier evidence, the general consensus among modern commentators is that the Gaius of 3 John is probably not the man from Derbe, but an otherwise unknown church figure. And so that's from Constantine Campbell. So the idea here is we know this was a common name. We know there were several Gaiuses that were referenced in Scripture. But more often than not, it's hard to pinpoint exactly which Gaius this was, or if it was a different Gaius altogether. But nevertheless, even though we can't necessarily nail down this particular historical individual, we know that he is someone who was a friend of John's and someone who is a champion of Christ, a friend of the faith of the church. So what kind of characteristics does Gaius have that we should seek to emulate? Well, first, he's faithful to the truth, right? He's committed to Christ, and it doesn't matter that there's this struggle going on. It doesn't matter that there is a named struggle here between 2 people, right? It doesn't matter that it's likely awkward or difficult or even ostracizing to stay committed. He is perseverant. And we also see that he is hospitable to the people of faith, the brothers and sisters that are traveling, the brothers and sisters that are spreading the word. They have a welcome place in the home of Gaius. And that is truly, a characteristic that is worth emulating. Hospitality has always been one of the signature markers of the people of Christ, right? We talked about in 2 John that John encourages the people to not show hospitality to those who are believing in this falsity that's spreading, right? He tells them don't extend that hospitality there. So the choice to extend hospitality to the people of faith, this is also a matter of allegiance, right? This is kind of a drawing of lines for this particular community. Who you allow in your home is kind of the side that you're on in this particular moment. But hospitality is a larger theme of Scripture for us to desire to be those who are hospitable. So let's look again here. It says, "Dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers and sisters. Even though they are strangers to you, they have told the church about your love. Please send them on their way in a manner that honors God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. We ought therefore to show hospitality to such people so that they may work together for the truth," right? These are people that have gone out for the sake of the name, right? I really like that phrase, right? They've gone out on behalf of Jesus. They're seeking to represent him. And it tells us here they're getting no help from the pagans. They're getting no help from those who are not a part of the community of faith. And so it is so important that they have a safe place to stay. It's so important that they have a place of welcome. This is a great service, a God-honoring service that Gaius is providing to these traveling Christians. Not only traveling Christians, not just people that are just traveling, but these are people that are traveling on a mission. And he is showing them hospitality. So Campbell puts it this way: Gaius' hospitality is a tangible expression of his love as well as his commitment to the truth, right? Not only here is he extending a blessing, he's showing love, but he's also showing allegiance to Jesus by housing those who have gone out in his name. So 1 John 4:19 through 21 shares a similar idea to what we've just been looking at here in 3 John. 1 John 4, beginning in 19. We love because he first loved us. Whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister, right? This is what John has been encouraging this community of faith to do. And if these are subsequent letters that came at different times, this is somebody who may have received 1 John and is truly living out the message that he had received from John previously, a message about the nature of those who are Jesus's disciples, who extend love because they appreciate first and foremost the love that they received from God. It inspires them, it motivates them, it empowers them to extend love to others as well. And so we see here this call, this command being lived out in practice by Gaius. And so it truly should be an encouragement to us as believers seeking to live out that call as well. And so we've got this other guy. We've got this guy named Diotrephes. I'm sure you could say it another way. That's how I'm saying it today. And it's hard to figure out exactly who this guy is, but we know he is in opposition. And we might immediately go back to what we've seen in 1 John and 2 John to think about the type of opposition he might be providing, right? It might be a real convenient conclusion to say, okay, he's one of these folks who has believed this lie about who Jesus is. Maybe he's someone who has fallen into the trap of docetism. Maybe he's someone who is, trying to, bring the group of believers down by promoting this falsity. And that very well may be true. But one thing that's interesting here is he doesn't use the word antichrist or deceiver or false prophet. And these are some terms that are used towards that particular group in some of the previous letters. So it's not to say that he isn't a part of that group, but some of those markers that would have been like, okay, for sure, this seems to line up. Some of those markers aren't necessarily there explicitly, but on the other hand, the literary similarities between 2nd and 3rd John suggest that these letters are addressing similar contexts. We may not have those home run, words that give us like that explicit clarity that, hey, this is one of the leaders of this group that's broken away. But at the same time, by looking at some of the issues that are being discussed here, it's not unreasonable to reach that particular conclusion. Nevertheless, we know that he was very antagonistic to John. If you want to look at the tense of the verb in verse 9, it could be translated, he will have nothing to do, is present tense. So Diotrephes was rejecting not merely his obligation to be hospitable, but John himself as the elder. This rejection of missionaries was his way of refusing to acknowledge the authority of John, and this attitude was going to continue. So if you remember at the beginning of 1 John, that prologue there, one of the purposes that John was, trying to accomplish was to remind the people that his testimony was believable, that his testimony should be listened to, that he is a person of the faith that they should seek guidance from, because he had seen, he had heard, he had touched, he had been with Jesus in a way that he was a credible witness. And so, kind of throughout each letter, he's seeking to deal with the fact that there are some in that community that don't deem him to be credible. So if you remember last week in 2 John at the end, he says, hey, don't extend hospitality to those who don't believe in the truth, but hey, I'm about to come visit you in person and see you face to face, right? So he's saying, hey, I am one whom is worthy of having hospitality extended to them, right? I am one who is bringing the truth. And so here, this particular individual is rejecting those who are out working in the name, who are out on behalf of Jesus. He's not allowing them into his home, which is not only a rejection of them, but it's a rejection of John himself. And so we see this conflict, we see this contrast between Gaius and between Diotrephes. They have this conflict that's happening between them. Verse 9 through 11, it says, I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will not welcome us. So when I come, I will call attention to what he is doing. He is spreading malicious nonsense about us, and he's not satisfied with that. He even refuses to welcome other believers. He also stops those who want to do so, and he puts them out of the church. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God, and anyone who does what is evil has not seen God, right? That's some of that stark contrast that we see from John, darkness and light, of Christ, antichrist, child of the devil, child of God, right? Of love or not of love, of the world or not of the world, right? These contrasts, right? It's either here are those who do good or those who do evil, and we have it tied to the behavior of these two individuals. And so the characteristics of Diotrephes here that we see, he loves to be first, right? He likes looking out for number one. He's inhospitable to the community of faith. It says he spreads malicious nonsense. He stops those who desire to be hospitable, even to the point of removing folks from the church. And so what's interesting here is we see that this person is a member of one of these communities of faith in this area, but he's a member of this false community. These people aren't claiming to not believe in Jesus to some extent, but they are claiming to believe in Jesus on their own terms. They're not claiming to believe in Jesus as Jesus said that he was, right? They've taken their own view about who Jesus is, and they've seemed to have created their own communities of faith based on this falsity. And it looks like they are still establishing those communities. And so it sets the scene for another messenger to come. This is the third character that's being introduced in this letter, a third person that's being introduced. This is this guy named Demetrius. And we know that kind of so far we've set up this scene where we've got this one guy who's hospitable, this one guy who's inhospitable, one guy who's aligned with the people of truth, one person who's not, and there's about to be somebody who enters in to this community. What is going to happen? So Demetrius, he's well spoken of by everyone, and even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him and know that our testimony is true, right? We can vouch for him. I think it's even, fair to say even here that, the church is vouching for him, that, he is a true disciple. He's somebody who you should treat in a God-honoring way, who you should extend love to, who you should extend hospitality to. And so verse 12 introduces the courier of the letter, a Christian named Demetrius. No doubt John assumes the hospitality and financial support shown to the other Christian travelers will be extended to Demetrius, who is well known by the Johannine community. He's a personal friend of John, and this strong affirmation of Demetrius surely anticipates that Diotrephes will say about him. Demetrius bears the authority of John himself, and since Diotrephes rejects John, he will likewise reject Demetrius. That's from Gary Bird. So this idea here is this person's about to come, and you're likely to see two different responses to this person entering into this community, to this area, to this neighborhood. You're likely to see him be rejected by Diotrephes, and you're hopefully going to see him be accepted by Gaius and by the community that Gaius represents. And so in advance of John coming, we see this messenger being sent. But John says he desires to come as well. I have much to write you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends here send their greetings. Greet the friends there by name. And so similar to the way he ends 2 John, he says, hey, I'm coming. I want to be with you. I want to be there face to face. I have much to talk to you about. And so I'd like to end our study of 3 John with just a few practical takeaways that I think are very much applicable to our circumstances today. And the first practical takeaway is that we should proactively seek to encourage, right? We know that, John is sitting down for the intention, it seems, of encouraging this particular person, right? It seems that he's a growing church leader. It seems that he's a young person who has remained faithful in the midst of challenges, but he's somebody who needs encouragement because of these challenges. And so we see an incredible example there provided by John the elder, right? He is behaving as a shepherd would. He is seeking to provide encouragement. That's something we all can do. There's nothing better than receiving a card or kind words or a gesture that shows, hey, I'm with you, or hey, I see what you're trying to do and I support you, or hey, don't think you're alone in this. I've got your back. We all have the power to encourage someone in the faith. I like this reminder here from Gary Chapman and Ross Campbell. It says the word encourage means to instill courage, right? It doesn't get any more simpler than that. But at the same time, think about how powerful that is, that we could, move the courage needle for someone else, right? We could take somebody from a place of maybe fear or anxiety or just saying, hey, I'm tired, I'm worn out, and we could move their courage needle just a little bit in the right direction. We have the power to instill courage in others. And so when we proactively seek to encourage, we're seeking to fill a void, right? We're seeking to speak into a particular situation. This next idea actually comes from, kind of the workplace setting, the organizational setting, but I think it's applicable beyond that. It says, without feedback, there can be no transformative change. When we don't talk to the people we're leading about their strengths and their opportunities for growth, they begin to question their contributions and our commitment. Disengagement follows, right? When people aren't hearing positive feedback for what they're doing, they're going to begin to question whether they're doing the right thing or not, right? And that can often cause people to either, one, change course, or two, just kind of step back and disengage, to adopt apathy, to just not be the person that they were being because they haven't heard anything, right? And that's not to say that we do what we do just for a blessing. In fact, that's not right. There's going to be seasons in which we don't get that positive encouragement, but as those who can support a brother and sister, hey, that's what we should be doing, right? We should be seeing the good things that are happening around us and going out of our way to affirm those things, to give people encouragement, to represent the name, right? That's what this is all about. Practical takeaway number one is proactively seek to encourage. Practical takeaway number 2 is to expect opposition, right? This is a church in the first century, right? This is an early church, and they're having this guy who is just messing things up, right? And he's a part of a larger group that's just kind of messing things up. Why would we expect anything different? This has been going on since the beginning of the church. Todd Bolsinger puts it this way: first, expect sabotage. And that's a good word for what this guy was trying to do, right? He's trying to sabotage things, right? He's intentionally withholding hospitality. He's intentionally, trying to attack the credibility of John, right? He's intentionally saying malicious things. He is trying to sabotage. Anticipation is a great defense. To be aware that sabotage is coming will at least keep us from being surprised when it comes, right? There is no sugarcoating that happens in the Bible, right? Tough things are coming, and even tough things within the church are a reality, right? We've experienced some of those in this season. There are going to be those who seek to mess things up with an agenda of their own. That is reality. And the scary part of that is if we're not careful, we can play that role ourselves. We have to constantly be watching our hearts. John, in his gospel, writes about the world and what we should expect from the world. But what's shown here in this letter is I think this type of behavior can exist in the church as well. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. And the reality is that Jesus wouldn't be welcomed in many of our churches. I hope that he would be more than welcomed here. I hope that we would, welcome him in the way that he deserves to be welcomed because we know who sent him. We see John here standing strong amid conflict, right? He's calling this person out, right? He's drawing a line in the sand, and he's saying, hey, when I get there, I'm going to do something about this, right? He is standing strong. And who stands strong on the behalf of the sheep? Well, one of the people that does that is the elder, is the shepherds. John in his gospel provides the example of Jesus, and Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and he runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and he scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. John 10, verses 11 through 13. That's not the case here. John cares for this community, and he is fighting on their behalf. Lynn Anderson provides this thought. Biblical shepherds are those who live among the sheep. They serve the sheep. They feed, they water, and they protect the sheep. They touch and talk to the sheep. They even lay down their lives for the sheep, right? He's encouraging. He's standing in the midst of conflict. He is calling that conflict out. He's identifying it for what it is, and he's there seeking to protect this struggling community of young Christians here in Ephesus. And so the last thing we see is his strong desire to be present. Right? He wants to be with them. There is a power of being with someone, right? That is one of the ways that we proactively seek the good of someone, is to be present for them. And that's what John desires for this community. And we know in this time we've done a lot of, other types of presence that isn't like in present in the same way that we would like to at different times. I think John would have been all about Zoom. I think he would have used it a lot. I think Paul would have saved a lot of miles. Probably would have lost some frequent traveler miles if Zoom existed, right? But these other tools at the end of the day aren't the same. And if John didn't have to write this letter, he's saying, hey, I would have much rather told you in person. Any sort of mediated presence is the palest shadow of what it is like to be with another person in person. That is present in the fullness of what our bodies make possible. There's just something different about being there face to face. And John affirms that to this community here. So what's the challenge to us? Well, show up for one another. Be present, encourage, stay in it when it gets tough, right? Keep doing the things that we're called to do. When others are stopped, when others are, being those who try to sabotage, when they're trying to mess things up, when they've got an agenda, you're saying, hey, I'm not about that. I'm going to keep doing what Jesus has called me to do in the midst of the mess. And I think that's what 3 John is all about. So thank you so much for being with us this morning. If you want to keep reading, next week we're going to be looking at the letter of Jude. So I hope that you will read that this week as we prepare for that study. So thanks again for being with us.